there lived two neighbors, Mrs. Anderson and Mr. Patel. They had lived side by side for years but had never spoken more than a casual greeting. The villagers often wondered why these two neighbors never seemed to get along. One sunny morning, Mrs. Anderson's beloved cat, Whiskers, went missing. She searched everywhere but couldn't find him. Desperate and worried, she decided to ask for help from Mr. Patel. She knocked on his door and explained her predicament, tears in her eyes. Mr. Patel, a kind-hearted man, couldn't turn her away. He agreed to help Mrs. Anderson search for Whiskers. They spent the entire day walking through the village, calling for the missing cat. As the sun began to set, they returned home with heavy hearts and still no sign of Whiskers. Mrs. Anderson thanked Mr. Patel for his help and returned to her house. The next morning, as Mrs. Anderson was sipping her tea, she heard a familiar meow at her doorstep. To her astonishment, there was Whiskers, safe and sound, waiting to be let in. She rushed outside and looked around, only to find Mr. Patel standing at his door, smiling warmly. He had found Whiskers and brought him back. Tears welled up in Mrs. Anderson's eyes as she thanked Mr. Patel profusely. She realized that her neighbor, whom she had never truly known, had shown her an unexpected kindness. From that day on, Mrs. Anderson and Mr. Patel became close friends. They shared meals, stories, and laughter, and their gardens bloomed with the friendship that had once been hidden behind closed doors. The heartwarming tale of Mrs. Anderson and Mr. Patel teaches us the importance of understanding and reaching out to our neighbors. Sometimes, all it takes is a moment of vulnerability and a helping hand to bridge the gap between people and discover the warmth of friendship.